Thank you very much, Bernie, and Kylie, of course, for facilitating me here today. It is number 5 of the Employer of Choice webinar series that we are doing. And look, what I'm going to discuss today is very much connected to everything else we've done today. So really just building on the principles that I've already shared with you. So I suppose a little bit today, actually, we just a slightly different take. We're going more towards the soft skills. So it's a little bit, I suppose, when I'm doing discussion groups, it's usually the stuff that farmers say, oh, I leave that to my wife, she's better than that, or I leave that to my daughter, she's better than that, because it's more of that soft skills that's kind of difficult to get your heads around. They're still learnable skill sets, so everything I've discussed today is something you can learn. It's not as straightforward as some of the stuff we've spoken about already, but I am going to give you some very clear examples and some well-respected information about how to manage this, so it should put it together quite well. Just before I start, just to explain a little bit about why I picked the title that I did. About 8, maybe 10 years ago, I was working in Doha in Qatar in an oil company, and somebody just during a tea break said to me, look, what do you think is the main skill in leadership? What is the leadership skill? And being from an academic background, I didn't want to hang myself, so I kind of gave the it depends answer. And he said, the guy just said to me, no, come on, give me one word. And for him, it was patience. And for me, it was respect. And I think everything comes under respect. So when we come from that really simple, basic place of respecting other people, we move a long way in that relationship. And when we do that as an employer, when we think of employees as people first, showing them respect as people first, we are moving much further along that employer of choice journey. So today I want to show you how you can demonstrate respect. Unfortunately, with humans, it takes a long time to build up a reserve of respect, and you can diminish it in a moment. So we need to be mindful as leaders, as employers, as managers, as a focal point within a relationship, that things that you do will be perceived in certain ways at the other end of that behavior. So you've got to be very mindful that throughout your relationship with your staff, throughout your relationship with the people around you, that you are showing and demonstrating respect. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how to do that today. So look, we'll go through a quick recap of where we are to date, because none of this is mutually exclusive. It all builds on what I've already spoken about. We look at individual differences. It's a big body of research in psychology. We look at the idea of motivation and how we use motivation to generate commitment. And by understanding people's motivation, you can show your respect for them. And then we're going to look at engagement and communication. So there's a lot of information today, more on the soft skills, and it's really you're going to have put all the basics in place. So what we've already discussed, of course, is management to development, your shifting role, the shifting role of people in your business. We have looked at delivering on your promises, so setting up that really clear foundation, that really clear structure at the bottom of the employment pyramid to allow you to really set yourself up. Now, putting all of those in place is demonstrating respect by having your health and safety, your policies, your contracts, all of those robust, protecting yourself and your employee. You are showing that you respect that relationship. So you're already creating a huge level of respect by getting those things, that set play in place. From there, we went on to look at accountability. Again, that's going to be part of showing respect, the respect that you believe somebody is worth holding accountable. If you ignore it, if you run away from that conversation, you're basically saying, I don't respect you enough to take the time. I don't believe you're capable of doing what I need you to do. You're not mature enough to take this responsibility. So accountability, having accountability in the workplace is showing respect both to yourself, that you're not taking extra burden, and to the other staff around you, and particularly those who may have to carry somebody who isn't doing their job properly. So accountability, respect is inherent in that as well. And then we looked at investing in your people asset in the session just gone, the 5th of August. And that's also about showing respect, that you respect your staff enough to invest in them, to take the time. We looked at it from a physical point of view, getting the setup right, from an emotional support point of view, understanding them as people rather than just employees, and then from a development perspective where you are investing in people to get the best out of them and to help them achieve their potential. So across all of those 4 sessions, respect is really weaving in and out through all of those ideas, and I'm just going to take that a bit further today. So when we look at individual differences, this is a really important one when we look at respect. You know, it's easy to write somebody off and say, oh, they're idiots, they're stupid, how could they not understand it, how can they not get it? That's the easy option. It's not the right option. And long term, it's the really difficult option, actually. So what you need to think about is individual difference. What is it about them that's different to me? And where is the point of conflict, and where's the opportunity to override that point of conflict? So the kind of things we would look at in individual differences, and actually this whole body of research is one of the reasons I stayed in psychology. I found it absolutely fascinating. Sorry, wrong way. So one of the things we look at is motivation. So what's motivating somebody at any one point, and that changes quite a lot. It changes if you reflected on your lifetime. You are motivated by different things throughout your lifetime. You're motivated by different things on a daily basis. You know, you might be motivated to get up in the morning, to go and have your breakfast, you know, to get out and milk your cows, to be finished the cows. It could be that you're hungry. It could be that you're tired. It could be that you have a particular job you need to get done today. So our motivation fluctuates quite a lot. And we look a little bit more at motivation, and one of the main theories of that in a moment. Then we've got things like personal feelings, so where somebody is at the moment. And this is not, please don't panic, this is not about holding hands, touchy-feely stuff. I don't mean that for a second when I am talking about understanding other people. I'm just saying what you need to understand is that there are days when you're run down, there's days when you feel negative, there's days when you're delighted with yourself. You know, you have those change in emotions, and just understanding that other people are entitled to having those emotions as well is really useful. What is a problem in leadership is that despite your personal feelings, you need to have the ability to self-regulate, which is the ability to manage how other people see your feelings. So even if your mood is going up and down, and we've spoken about this before, I believe, we talked about the swan. So you need to have, you know, you're looking very, very poised above the water, though your feet are paddling furiously underneath. And unfortunately, that is one of the challenges. So sometimes, you know, as a person, you want to really demonstrate your feeling, but as an employer, that's the wrong thing to do. So actually the challenge is more for you in managing your personal feelings and understanding individual differences that way. But certainly showing somebody the respect that you understand that they're going through something at the moment, or that they're not in a good place, or that they need a little bit of, today is the day you give them a pat on the back and say, well done, rather than have a go at them for doing something wrong. That's really important. Within personality, so if I was doing a discussion group workshop, I would often spend time on personality, because, you know, one of the things I come across a lot in with farmers particularly, and we're going to talk about tolerance, is saying, oh, you know, somebody's stupid, they don't get what I'm talking about, they don't understand it, why wouldn't they get that? And it often comes down to personality differences. And one of the things where we see a huge amount of personality coming, that I would see a huge amount of personality coming through, is in, you know, somebody like bodies like Dairy Australia, like Chagas, like AHDB in the UK, some of the processors, maybe the cooperative system in Ireland, they say we see the same farmers all the time. It's the same farmers who are coming to our events. How do we get hold of the other people? And actually, there's kind of a feeling that the people who aren't there are the people who should be there, and there's something wrong with them. Why aren't they here? And they're, you know, there's kind of judgments being made about people who aren't at the events, and actually could come down to something as simple as personality, that there are people who just don't feel the need to go to workshops, they don't feel the need to go to events, and that's a personality difference. And when you explain, so ultimately advisory will always be done in a group and an individual setting. There's no way around it. If you want to get to a body of people, you have to do it in group settings and individually, and that's a personality thing. So I would see that coming through a lot when I work with different farming groups. The other thing, just very quickly, that's of interest is the personality. It's a certain type. Doing discussion groups, and I do personality profiling, and you quite often get a huge number of people with the same personality type in the discussion group, so they're actually attracting like for like. Now, the problem with having the same people, having people who look exactly like you in the business, and I mean from a personality, not from a physical appearance, it means that your problem-solving ability is actually limited, because if you all think the same, you're not going to see your way through a problem. So actually, when somebody thinks differently to you, valuing that is really, really important, because it helps you to see the bigger picture. If you all think the same, you can't solve the problem. So Einstein said the thinking that caused the problem can't solve the problem. So having people with different personality, you know, having different personalities in your workplace is really, really valuable. Just a caveat to that, it shouldn't be used, you shouldn't use personality testing in your business, because you don't have enough numbers sufficiently going through. So just from a statistical point of view, it doesn't make sense, but it's a great conversation starter to get people talking about things. So as we look at the next thing we could have is learning styles. So some people, and I probably mentioned this before in terms of standard operating procedures, some people learn by listening. So you explain it to them and they can do it. Some people learn by pictures, by maybe drawing a picture for them, by looking at a video, which is visual, and some people learn by kinesthetic means, so they have to try it. You know, it'll be kind of, and you'll hear it in the conversation, they'll say something like, you know, just let me have a go. I don't know what you're talking about till you let me have a go. That would be kinesthetic. Look, I can't see what you're talking about. Can you draw it for me? Can you present it for me? So learning styles, now that's a very, very brief description of learning styles. Clearly the brain is more complicated than that. But at a minimum, learning styles, you're looking at visual, audio, and kinesthetic. And if you are the type, we tend to use the one that we personally prefer. So what I would see on farming is there's a lot of kinesthetic teaching because it's a hands-on job, so people tend to do it in a hands-on way. But if you can do all versions of the learning, then you're going to hit all three concepts, and that's going to make you more successful in terms of communicating. So, you know, for your standard operating procedures, you should have videos, you should have photographs, you should have written instructions, and you should allow people to shadow and to follow, and you should demonstrate it and let them try it. So that's a difference in learning styles. That's showing respect for the fact that people learn differently. And then we also have working styles. So again, these, you know, working styles are learned. It's how you learn. Did you learn to be a last minute person? You know, are you very organized? What are the kind of things that you're doing? How are you working? And for somebody who's a perfectionist, the hurry up type learning style is going to be really annoying because the hurry up is likely to make mistakes. For the hurry up type person, the perfectionist is going to wreck their heads because they're spending too long and nothing can be perfect and it's frustrating. So we need to look at who's doing what and how that's impacting the system and where that conflict is. And once we can recognize that, then we can show respect by saying, okay, this is how you do it, this is how I do it, what's our common ground, how will we get past that? And it could be things like when we look at personality, when we look at learning styles, when we look at working styles. Some people in learning styles, some people take longer they need to reflect on information. They're not going to answer on the spot. They're going to assume they're going to assimilate their information in a different way. And you know, by understanding that somebody not having an answer for you straight away doesn't mean they're belligerent or ignorant or not invested in your business. It just means they take longer to take that information. So it could be that you warn them in advance. So if you were going to have a meeting with them about something on the farm, you give them information in advance so they can answer you on the spot. So individual differences is a fascinating area. There are lots of popular psychology tests online that are good fun to do. Please, please, please do not box people based on those ideas. Have a go, think about it. I will, in the fact sheet, put in a couple of references that you can just, you know, over a coffee break, over your breakfast, try a couple of those. And it's just a great conversation starter so that people understand, oh, so you're not being disrespectful to me. You're not being belligerent. You actually just think differently to me. How fascinating. Let's have a conversation around that. And then we start respecting each other a lot more. So individual differences, really interesting area of psychology and really useful to start thinking about people not just wrong. They're not wrong because they're different to you. They're just different. So the minute you say somebody is wrong, you have a religious warfare, which is a value-based judgment. If I say you're wrong, you cannot be wrong. That's your experience. All I can do is influence you to come to my way of thinking. So around all of that is creating tolerance, this idea of tolerance. And I've mentioned it several times, excuse me, I've mentioned it several times that there's a lack of tolerance in the farming community because so many farmers grew up on farm and so have that huge body of information they don't even know they have. So looking at individual differences, seeing your staff as employees, as people before employees, demonstrates respect, and within that is tolerance. So tolerance is a huge aspect of respect. Looking at the next idea of motivation, you see down there in the bottom corner, this is from 1943, 1954. This is one of the most widely used models of motivation. Why do we see nothing more advanced on that? Well, because you can't measure motivation. And so if you can't measure it, it's not really, research doesn't really invest into it. But what we know from this model, and this is a powerful model, it's called the hierarchy of needs. And it's about understanding where somebody is. And the idea is you want to get somebody to the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization, it's personal fulfillment, it's realizing your potential. That's the goal. So organizations pay a huge amount of money to consultants to get them to help their staff to help their employees reach self-actualization. And there's a very clever reason for that. If you are motivated enough by the work, I don't have to pay you as much, and you take greater hardship. So it's, you know, it's quite a cynical way of looking at it. But if you're getting great value and enjoyment from your work, you'll almost do it anyway. So, and we know that, you know, if you love what you're doing, you won't work a day in your life. So we see this is a huge industry where consultants are selling this notion of intrinsic motivation, of value in the workplace, of workplace value, so that they can get more from, they can get a better productivity from their employees. What this model is saying is that you will never get there if you do not have the previous rungs in place. So let's look at that very bottom line. It says biological and physiological needs. This is a really simple one. And this comes back to my triangle again. You'll notice we've got a triangle going on here, much similar to the triangles I've discussed from an employment point of view. If you are not fulfilling basic needs, you're never going to get up here. You're never going to reach that, because if I'm lacking food or shelter or warmth or sleep, well, I'm not as productive. I just can't be. So it's something that's really valuable when we look at farming, and I would certainly see it in a block calving system where you have extreme fatigue due to overnight calving, etc. This, you know, sleep deprivation undermines this entire pyramid. So if I didn't have sleep, how can I be the best I can be? If I don't have adequate pay, how can I be the best that I can be? So we have these things as another theory of motivation called hygiene factors. And this is the idea that you need these things to be in place. Having more of them doesn't make you happier, but not having them makes you unhappy. So if we ran Hertzberg's hygiene factors with this model, we would see that these two lower levels are showing that without these, your employees will be unhappy, but having more of them doesn't necessarily make you happier. But do not underestimate the importance of these simple things. So what does that come back to when we're showing respect? Having a warm, clean place where people can sit down and enjoy their breaks, so having good staff facilities, allowing people to take their breaks without interfering with those breaks. So if somebody's on a break, you shouldn't go in and talk about farming business to them. You probably should let them alone in general, because as the employer, there's a power-based relationship that is politically strained. So, you know, it's not, unless, I know people would say I'll work with somebody I could have a pint, I could go for a pint with in the pub, but they mightn't feel the same way about you. So you need to be mindful about giving people their space. We also have things here like safety needs, so law, limits, stability. This is about having contracts in place. It's about allowing people to finish on time. So you might be the nicest person in the world, and there might be great sense of love and belonging, and I feel part of the team. However, I can't get home in time to collect my kids from nursery or from school, wherever they are. That's a deal breaker. So I never flourish on this level 3 because you've undermined the previous level. So it's thinking about what have you put in place that's motivational to your staff. How are you respecting them by understanding that motivation? And within motivation across the year, now motivation is fickle, so it changes quite dramatically. The more you understand a person's motivation at any one time, the more you can facilitate that employee, and the higher the likelihood of staff retention. So we're talking about, we've spoken already that you must have a tolerance for high turnover with an ambition for retention. One of the ways that you retain somebody is by respecting their current motivation. So we're coming back to that idea of respect. Have you everything in place that allows people to move up the system? And if you're allowing people to move higher up the triangle within your business, there's a much higher likelihood they will stay with you because they understand that you value and respect them. So motivation, again, we get the basics in place. It's fickle, it can change. We know that this morning you were probably hungry, so you wanted your breakfast. At lunchtime, you wanted your dinner. You're probably tired now thinking, I'm sitting here listening to this, but what I really want is to go and watch, you know, Netflix or whatever it is. Our motivations change quite frequently. But when we understand that and respect that about our employees, we're in a much better position. And of course, as business owners, it's really typical to undermine somebody else's commitment or motivation because it doesn't suit you. Now, as the owner of your business, you are highly committed to your business. You are motivated on a daily basis to make it work well. And you may feel that your staff are fickle, are flaky, are not invested. You have to earn that right. So you have to invest, you have to work with that person. Showing respect is a great way to get somebody to be committed to your business. Looking at this next one, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this. So we discussed the idea of individual differences. We talked about learning styles. We talked about working styles. I have had, just to reflect on a couple of questions, I was asked, I think it was the last session, I was asked about progression. So how long does it take? What are the time scales for progression? And I mentioned I would show a specific model. I had a brilliant question, either the first or second webinar in this series, that asked about, when I have somebody who I know is good, how do I help them and give them the confidence to move forward? I'm going to answer those. We had a good conversation, Bernie, Kylie and I, at the after the last session, discussing about how, you know, the person who's coming on the webinars and they're listening to the information, or they're listening to it later, and I think this is good stuff. How do I share it with my business partner? How do I share it with the people around me? This is going to really, really help you to do that, because this is about understanding how to impart information in a way that shows you respect and you're tolerant. So I'm going to go through this. This is based on, as we see down here, situational leadership theory. It's from 1969. It's been made very famous by the Blanchard Corporation in a series called The 1 Minute Manager. So there's little books, it's like an airplane read. It's done in a story style, but every company in the Fortune 500 in the US claims to use this leadership model. Now, you might say, well, it's not relevant to me because, you know, I'm a farmer in Australia. What does corporate America to do with me? All of business thinking comes from the US. Or what we need to be good at is making it work for our own systems. So just because it comes from a corporate area doesn't mean that it's not useful to you. And remember, an organization is only a multiple of an individual. So, you know, you could, no matter how big the business is, it started with individuals, it has individuals within it. So this applies to everywhere we go. And I would use this as kind of my American Express. I don't leave home without it, because this really is, it's fairly flawless, to be honest. And I have a PhD in leadership, and nothing touches this. So looking at this, what I want to discuss here is this idea of the follower and the leader. Now, you're going to talk about the employee and the employer, okay? When somebody is going to, you're looking at, it's a situational model, and the situation is the task and the employee. So you're looking at the employee and you're saying, what's the task they're about to learn, and what is this employee like in relation to that task? And again, we're looking at 4 quadrants, so we're looking at 2 axes. You're going to ask yourself, for this employee, what is their competence and what is their commitment in relation to the task? Now, when somebody is learning something new, when somebody comes new into your business, I'm going to describe this in several different ways to really get the point across. When they're new into your business, you have to believe they've come to make a good impression. You must genuinely believe that nobody comes into your business, nobody applied for a job in your business or accepted a role in your business to do badly. They come as an enthusiastic beginner. Okay, so they're interested to learn. Now, we say they're an enthusiastic beginner, and we say that they've got high commitment, so they're up for it, they want to learn, that's a positive attitude, but they don't know what they're doing because it's your business, they're new to the business, so they've got low ability. And we call that person the enthusiastic beginner. Now, what you need to do is respond accordingly. If somebody comes to your business and doesn't know what they're doing, you need to tell them. You need to be very, very directive. We are conditioned by media to believe that a telling style of leadership, of management, is negative. That is rubbish. Okay, that is just somebody along the way got the ear of somebody and decided let's sell this as a business model. If somebody doesn't know what they're doing, you must tell them. There must be heavy instruction at the beginning of your business relationship with your employee. So you're putting a lot of stuff in place to make that happen. And the kind of things we're going to see in terms of enthusiastic beginner and helping you on that telling, you're going to have standard operating procedures in place. You're going to have great clarity in your contract. You're going to have arrows and signs and all sorts of things in your business that help with that telling phase of a person's life journey, working journey in your business. So we can really load this from the very, very beginning to get it right for the enthusiastic beginner. Now, as a function of time, or even better, your ability to, this inevitably happens, but we can move, what we want to do is move people through the system. Now, as the person is with you, they maybe realize, okay, they still don't know anything, and now they're going, oh, it's not quite the job I thought it was. I thought farming was going to be about cuddling calves, and that's not happening at all. And I thought I'd be doing this, that, and the other, and I'd be really in touch with nature, and I'm inside in the shed all the time working with cows or milking, whatever it is. or I thought I was going to be driving tractors all day and there's no tractor to be seen for miles. You know, so people come and they realize it's not, maybe, I hate getting up this early, or the day is too long, or there isn't enough, maybe it's boring at one end of the year and too busy at the other end of the year. So we see that people are beginning to reevaluate what they're doing, and they become a little bit like the disillusioned learner. So they're still on the journey. They still don't know what they're doing. They're still on that learning phase, but they're also feeling a little bit negative about the job. So it's kind of, they're after the honeymoon period, they're feeling a bit of reality shock, going, oh, okay, this isn't what I thought it was. At this point, the leader, the employer, your manager, you're going to move away from being very directive and telling, and you're going to bring in a little bit of emotional support and selling. And what does that look like? Well, that looks like encouragement. So you're still telling them what to do, but you're also encouraging them. You're also, you know, showing that you understand that they've maybe bitten off more than they can chew. They see is that they're feeling a little bit negative about things. And you're going to do things like, you know, you're doing really well. This time 2 months ago, you'd never seen a cow. Now look at you. You've never milked in this size setup before, and you're doing really, really well. You're encouraging the person. You're showing them that you understand that they've taken a dip in emotion. When the person moves on, they're going to become what's known as a capable but cautious performer. And this is the type of person who is still a little bit negative about the job. You know, and I mean in the sense that they're holding back a little bit. They've got good ability. You know they've got good ability. You know they've loads of potential in your business, but they're still just that little bit reluctant, maybe a little bit scared. If they dip their toe in the water, they'll get punished, that they'll fail, that it'll go wrong. And this is where you need to start changing your leadership, your employer, your management style into what's called a participating or supporting style. And this is where you start bringing your staff member into the decision-making process, asking their opinion. Look, Mary Jane, you've been here for 3 months now. I know you worked in New Zealand before you came here. What's your opinion? That's a great idea. Let's try that. You know, you're showing them that you believe in them and you support them. You're also allowing them to fail safely. So you know they're good enough to do the job, but they're just lacking that confidence. And you need to demonstrate to them your faith in them. And so you allow them to fail safely. What does that look like? Well, you certainly don't say, right, Mary Jane, you're absolutely fantastic. I'm going on a world tour. You've got the run of the whole place. You say something like, I'm away at a discussion group tomorrow morning, or I'm going to do something tomorrow morning. I'm leaving you in charge. I'm fully confident in your capability. This is where I'll be. Call me at any time if you're, if you're worried. This is what I anticipate is going to happen tomorrow. So we're expecting the guy with the fertilizer to come. I'm expecting such and such to happen. I don't see any other issues beyond that. Call me if you need to, but I don't think you will. So what you're doing is you're showing the person that you have full confidence in them to run your business, but you're not paralyzing them into inaction because you've given them too much responsibility too quickly. So that's one of the previous questions where somebody said, if I've got a good person and I'm worried and I know they're good, but they're just still holding back a little bit, that's holding their hand, showing them that you believe in their ability, demonstrating to them how good their ability is by asking for their opinion, acting on their opinion, allowing them in the decision maker, and be a decision maker. And ultimately, we want to get to the high achiever. Now, the model, as the original model, is drawn from right to left. So this is my adaptation of it, and that's why it goes in the rotation it does. We come to quadrant 4 down here, and this is a delegating phase, and we're looking for the high achiever. So this is somebody who's good at what they're doing and feels good about doing it, so the high achiever. And this is delegation. Now, delegation in its truest form means that you are still, they're responsible for the completion of the task, but you are accountable for the standard of completion. And what I mean by that is you are accountable in the sense that you should be asking the right person to do the job. Not the easiest person, i.e. the person who says yes and doesn't argue. You're asking the right person to do the job, and you are holding yourself accountable for the quality of that job completion because you're holding yourself accountable for the ability of the people in your business. And that is your role in the business as the manager, as the leader. You are ultimately accountable for how well the people in your business do their job. So and also this is about, this idea of delegation is about you are still there and available to support them should they need you. Because they're that high achiever, because they're good at what they do and enjoying doing it, they're unlikely to look for your support, but it's good, they need to know they have it. So it's a placebo effect. Because they have it, they don't need to use it. So what does this look like for you in real life? Well, every single person on the planet goes through this cycle several times in their lifetime. One of the easiest ways to describe it is the schooling system. Yeah, I'll describe that. I want to describe something after that. So the schooling system, so for example, we have here your little person. So in Ireland, you'd be going into primary school, you're 4 or 5, you're dead excited, you know nothing, but your brothers and sisters have gone to school before you and you can't wait, you want to be a big person, you're sick of being at home holding mommy's hand, and you're really enthusiastic about school. Halfway through school, oh, I hate Monday mornings, Friday will never come, this homework stuff is rubbish, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be, and now I know what my brothers and sisters were complaining about. And then we get to here where you're moving towards the end of it, you know what you're doing, you're competent, you're capable, your teachers are giving you a little bit of responsibility. And then here is your final year of primary school or junior school or whatever your system calls it. And you know what you're doing, you understand the whole system, you're maybe in charge of the younger kids in the playground, there's maybe a little bit way better than you are because you're older. And you're enthusiastic because next year you'll be going into big school. And next year you go into big school and you're dead excited because it's big school and you're learning new stuff and everybody's gone before you and you can't wait to be a big person and you're in secondary school or high school or whatever your system calls it and you're dead excited and then halfway through, oh, it's not what I thought it was. I hate exams. I hate Monday mornings. I hate homework, getting a little bit more competent. And then eventually we get to our final year of high school and we're thinking, woohoo, I know exactly what I'm doing. The world is my oyster. I've got my whole life ahead of me when I leave next year. We're the big kids. We're important. We're in charge. Everything's awesome. Start off again here. Apprenticeship, job, university, traveling, staying at home, whatever it is you're doing. Yay, this is really brilliant. I'm looking forward to it. Halfway through, oh, I'm not sure I like university. I'm not sure I like this job. I'm not sure, you know, traveling is getting a bit tight now because I don't have as much money. It's a little bit scarier than I thought it was. We're going through all of this cycle all of the time. And that's exactly what is happening to your staff members. Now, we have an added complication to this model because at any one time, any one person in your business could be in all 4 quadrants, and you need to respond accordingly. So what does that look like? Somebody comes into you, they have a huge amount of experience. Now, because of their experience, there's an assumption, well, you know what you're doing, get on with it. And we dump that person into the high achiever, into that delegation, hands off. It's laissez-faire, actually, it's abdication. Somebody's expertise, so their previous experience will bring them through that cycle very, very quickly, but they still have to go through the cycle. So you can't, if you look at the enthusiastic beginner, they'll know what they're doing, but they need to do your system. And I had a really excellent version of it, a discussion group I was working with. There was a New Zealand girl and in Ireland, she's a relief milker, and she looked at it and she said, you know what, I went through that exact model last week. I started off as a beginner. The employer came, he showed me all around. On the first day, he did the milking, he spoke to me, he let me watch him. On the second day, I did the milking, but he shadowed me. So I shadowed him on the first day, enthusiastic beginner. On the second day, and this is in 1 week, on the second day, he shadowed me. On the third day, he said to me, I know that you're capable, I'm fully confident in you, but I'm here and I'm available and I'll pop in and out to see that everything is going okay. So that's a capable but cautious performer, participating, not running away from it, not letting her feel totally isolated. And on the fourth day, he said, I am fully confident that you know what you're doing. Are you happy with the system? Do you know what I require of you? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So we've got this really good understanding that both people knew exactly what was happening on that high commitment, high competence. And she felt that she hadn't been thrown in at the deep end. Now, just because she had experience, it might have been tempting or obvious to throw in at the deep end. But actually, well, she's an expert in the skill set. She is a novice to your system, and so she needs to know how you do it. Now, what happens often is we get somebody in, they've milked 50 million cows all over the world, and you dump them into that fourth phase of delegation, of what you believe is high achiever in delegation, and they don't do it exactly the way you wanted it, and all of a sudden you're going, well, they're not all that, are they? I thought they had this, that, and the other experience, and they're not as impressive as I thought they were. And now we have an issue where the human error in thinking, confirmation bias, you now start looking for other faults in this person. And actually it was your fault in the first place for not taking them through the system. So through this life cycle. So just because somebody has the experience in the first place, it doesn't mean you can automatically dump them into that fourth quadrant. But what it does mean is they're likely to get there faster. So experience will expedite the process and you'll get them into quadrant 4 faster. but it doesn't mean they're not going to go through the cycle. So be very mindful of that. When you're bringing people in with prior experience, I would often say to people, as farmers, as employers, we're far more sympathetic to the non-family member, the non-family, non-dairy, non-English speaker, because you're at pains to make sure they understand what you're speaking about. There's no assumptions made. If somebody's never been on a dairy farm before, you are taking your time to bring them through that cycle. If they're not a family member, you're not making any assumptions about whether they understand when you grunt or not. If they don't speak English, you are going out of your way to clarify your own language as quickly as possible. You're getting all those videos in place. You're getting all that very clean language in place that doesn't allow room for misinterpretation. So thinking about it that way, we are far kinder to the person who doesn't have experience. But bringing somebody in with experience, make sure you take them through the cycle. So before I described that, I want to talk about this idea that at any one time, any one employee in your business could be in all 4 quadrants. What does that look like? I am a superb milker. I've got loads of experience and I know your system well. I'm a high achiever. You're letting me get on with the job. If you mismatch the leadership style with where I am, you will frustrate me. So I'm very good at milking cows in your system, and you come and you start telling me what to do. You treat me as if I'm the enthusiastic beginner. You stand on my shoulder and you start telling me what to do. I perceive that as micromanaging, and that is infuriating. So we need to consider where the person is. However, I've come from a house system. I've never done grass measuring before, and I'm new to your system, so or the other way around. I've never done rations before, so I've come from a grass system and I'm new to the house system. I'm in quadrant 1, and you're showing me about the nutrition of cows, and I'm really enthusiastic to learn it because it's something else to add to my CV. It's making me a better employee. It's adding to my resume, and I'm enthusiastic to learn. So I'm in quadrant 1 on the feed system, whatever that happens to be. I am in quadrant 2 on hoof trimming. You've sent me on a course. It was all great when I was on the course, but now you're letting me loose on your cattle. I'm feeling a little bit anxious and nervous about it. So I need you to hold my hand and support me and give me that emotional support and encourage me to do it. And let's say, what will we do for AI? Let's take AI, for example. So you're in quadrant 3, you're very good at it. I know you're very good at it, but you're still a little bit reluctant to be there on your own because you know the significance and the importance of that task on farm. So I am responding to you accordingly. So I am telling you how to do the system. I am telling you how to measure the grass or how to mix the ration. I am encouraging you on your hoof trimming, because I know you're learning, you're trying it carefully on my animals, and you're doing really, you're a little bit. It was grand when you had a nice quiet show cow to do it on when you were learning from the hoof trimmer in the hoof trimming course, but now you've got into cows with independent thought. It's a little bit different. And then as we move down to that capable but cautious performer, you know how to do your AI. You just don't want to be left on your own, but you don't want anybody micromanaging you on the cows. So I've got 4 people who are I've got 1 person doing 4 tasks, and I'm responding differently accordingly. If I assume that because you're good at maths, you can speak French, or if I assume because you're good at milking cows, of course you can measure grass, that's what's called a halo effect in psychology, and that's very dangerous because you're not responding to the task. And then you become frustrated or dismissive of the person because, you know what, they're not doing the job. You thought, well, they're really good at this job. Why wouldn't they be good at the other job? It doesn't work that way. We know plenty of people who are good in one area, and that unless they're taught, that skill doesn't transfer. So you need to teach them to be good in the other area as well. And it's very common for people to make that mistake. Just, well, you're good at everything, so I'll just delegate. And then we get and put you in that high achiever box. And then we get somebody who becomes really frustrated in the workplace because they feel they're not being given the right support in the new tasks they're doing. And so you have this person who is highly confident as a relief milker for you, who's now come in full-time, and they're not as good working for you full-time as they were as a relief milker. And that's because you assumed too much of their ability in other tasks. The other thing we have to think about with this model, and this model, as I mentioned, it's a big one, it's complicated. Any change in the system will cause regression. So we're down there in number 4. I'm absolutely awesome at milking your cows in the herringbone. I've only ever milked cow in the herringbone parlour, and now you're changing to rotary. I go backwards for a while. Just for a while. We're still, it's not the same as it was. I preferred the old system. I was much faster. I don't like the speed of the rotary, etc. So I've lost confidence and it's gone backwards. The leader, the manager, the employer must intervene. If you do not intervene, people are going to flounder in that disillusioned learner phase. So we need to be proactive in bringing people along. And that is showing tolerance. That is showing huge respect. It's not writing them off because they're a disillusioned learner and they're not as joyful and as capable about the job as you thought they would be. It's actually saying, I need to give you support. I need to respect where you are on your learning journey, and I need to bring you on that journey and not just make assumptions that you should be as good as I want you to be straight away, but understanding that I need you to be as So just understanding that you need to be respecting, sorry, I just heard myself on the computer, understanding that you need to respect yourself, to respect the people in the system and bring them on that journey. So really, really valuable. I can't put enough emphasis on that idea. As you see there, the job stages align with that really, really cleverly as well. We've got the honeymoon phase, which is the telling. We've got the job stages, which is also, so the job stages, we've got shock, which is the disillusioned learner. This is from 1974 by Kramer. The recovery phase where people say, well, I'm here now, I need to get on with it. And then resolution, understanding and working the system the best to your ability. So when we look at this system, it's a very natural one. Anybody coming through your business is going to go through that life cycle. The better you are as an employer and manager at spotting where they are in any task, the faster you can bring them through to quadrant 4. The faster you can bring them through to quadrant 4, the more productive your business will be. The faster you can bring them through to quadrant 4, the happier and more engaged your employees will be, the better your chance of developing the employer of choice status, and you are moving a long way towards good retention of staff. So that model is really, really valuable. If we move to the next slide, please, Bernie. Just finishing up on this idea, effective communication. This communication, I want to show you this because the model I've just shown you and other models I've shown you fill into this really, really well. So when we want to get the best out of people, we want to show respect for them, it really is about effective communication. Because the more effective you are at communicating somebody, the easier it is for them to understand and not misunderstand. The easier it is for them to understand, it shows, you're creating a huge, they respect you as an employer and you respect them because they're doing their job properly. And actually that all hinges on communication. Nollaig. Thank you, Kylie. So looking at this, I don't have to dwell on this, even though communication is a hugely complicated area. I love this square of communication because Steve Peters, he started off as a neurosurgeon, he then became a psychiatrist, and now he works as a sports psychologist very effectively for a lot of high-performing athletes. And he talks about this square of communication, and basically, we have looked across this series. Okay, so communication is a big, big area. It's difficult to get your head around, but actually we've put a lot of skill set in here that will help you to really improve your communication. So in discussions with Bernie Baxter and what we would do in these webinars, we've pretty much filled out what you need to do here, and we've given you some clear models. So the right person, always speak to the right person first. So the right person is in the middle. We looked last week, we looked at investing in your staff, and we talked about the urgent and important staff. It's important to think about when you're looking at the urgent important, I think it's gone quite small there in the screen if I'm correct, but from my view, it's gone quite small. The right person is who has the power and interest. So we looked at that model in the last session when we looked at investing in your staff. So that comes up as the right person if Bernie clicks that key down and brings up the next part of that slide. I've given you a model to look at the right person. Make sure you're communicating with the right person. Not communicating with the right person is like school ground politics. It's complaining about the person who's doing the job wrong to everybody else and not holding that person accountable. So there's a huge accountability there. Up there in that top left corner, we've got right time. Well, that comes out from, if you go back and look at the webinar that we did in May, so the 7th of May, we did the effective time management, looking at that idea of planners. So Bernie, you should, when you press that key, you should see the right time comes up there as a planner. The right agenda was also covered in that when we looked at urgent and important. So we've covered a lot of this already in this series of webinars. And then the right way is the slide we just did. So it's a situational leadership theory. So as a series, as the information you've been provided, you have a lot of the tools to help you to be a more effective communicator within these sessions. So you shouldn't be afraid of really getting engaged with this idea of effective communication. The day you work to be a better communicator shows that you really respect your staff. You understand the asset that your staff is, which means you are showing great business acumen. It means that you are respecting the people around you and that you are really looking to be a good employer. And that top right, that very final one, the right place, well, that makes, you know, trying to get an important conversation across with somebody, oh, I know where they are, they're milking the cows. I can go in there and speak to them when they're milking the cows because they're a captive audience. And this person is in the flow, they're really good, and you're tapping on their shoulder to get a message across from them. That's hugely frustrating. You've got somebody who is in flow, they're just getting on with milking the cows, they're in a rhythm, they're happy out, the cows are happy out, and you're breaking that rhythm. You're giving them a message that they probably can't hear properly over the noise of the machinery or the noise of the cows. So think about the right place. That's the last one. Farm environments, they're quite noisy places. So just be mindful where you're giving that information. And also the right place is about not humiliating somebody if you have to hold them accountable, but actually taking them aside and doing it properly. So effective communication, knowing how to respond to somebody. What's there? If we look at, so Bernie, you're just moving on to that summary slide there, the next slide. What have we looked at? We've discussed, we've talked about respect being an understanding that people aren't stupid. They're not incompetent just because they're different to you. They're just different. So that's what makes the world go round, so it's understanding, and as the expression is not queer as folk. So it's understanding that people have differences and they'll always surprise you. An employer of choice is always pleasantly surprised. They're always impressed with how people add and give even more to their business, and they're always impressed with the contribution that people make. So understanding that individual difference is showing that you respect that the other person is different to you, and that that's a good thing, and that they're not stupid or morons, or why doesn't my employee, I've told him 1,000 times, why didn't he get what I was talking about? Well, actually, you're the person in the wrong there. You should have changed the record after time 2 when that person didn't understand it. We then looked at this idea of motivation. So when you sit down and understand your staff and understand where they are in their life, you're respecting their current motivation and you can respond to that. The better you are at understanding where people are in terms of their motivation and showing respect for their current situation, the greater your possibility of retention is. And then when we look at that the third thing concept we looked at there was this idea of situational leadership theory. So being really tolerant and understanding what somebody's competence and what their commitment is, and responding accordingly. So with low commitment but high commitment but low competence, we're going to tell them what to do. We're going to be very directive because they need to know how to do the job. There's no point in asking somebody how to do the job if they don't know how to do it. What's very common in a toxic business is to tell somebody to do the job, they don't know how to do it, and then they get punished. That's a really toxic business. If I go into any business, I can pretty much tell the health of the business, the state of the business off that model. I can just say, right, that's where you are and this is where you need to be, or you're doing a really good job and you're moving along nicely. Here's a couple of things to tweak that. And you're then moving on to the person who's the disillusioned learner. So they still don't know what they're doing and they're not feeling as good about it because it's not quite what they thought it was. They're in that reality shock of the job rather than the honeymoon phase. Then we move on to the capable but cautious performer. They're capable. They have more than enough skill sets. They're just a little bit reluctant and holding back. You have to give them the courage to believe in themselves and to push forward. And then that very final one, which is where we all ultimately want to get to, is the high achiever. And finally, we looked at communication. Communication is a big, sprawling body of research. It's complicated, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't work on it. So why is communication complicated? Because you've got the whole issue of body language and tone and all of those things in there. But we can really, really, really improve communication by having a lot of set play in place. So all of the things we've discussed already, good contracts, good standard operating procedures, we can do those really well using your planner. So if you go back to that effective time management webinar and draw out your planner and say, where's a good time to train my staff? I want my staff to do a new skill. If you're a block system, it's certainly not in the middle of calving. Where are the opportunities? Where are the gaps that will allow me to effectively communicate with my staff? The right agenda. Don't allow somebody to go way vague about what they're trying to do. Use words like, I need you to do this. This is important. This is urgent. It must be done now. It must be done and it must be done now. Use those types of words so that there is no room for error. Use your whiteboards. And then we've got things like, I just mentioned that the situational leadership theory is the right way to discuss somebody. So understanding who's in front of you, how they are in relation to that task, and that's going to be the right way. And choose your place. You know, don't do it over loud machinery and risk the message being lost. I did forget there, just on the summary, the right person. Make sure you're speaking to the right person always. Not to do so is time consuming and very frustrating. So get to the right person, speak to them, accord in the right way, i.e. what's their competence, what's their commitment. Timing is everything, and give them an agenda which is about urgent and important. And all of those put together is showing that you really value and respect your staff, because you're taking the time to understand where they are on any task. You're taking the time to respond to them accordingly. That's showing that you respect them as individuals and that you're not writing them off because they're different to you, but you're valuing that difference, you're working with it, and you're pushing through to get that really high achiever and that capable performer. So respect it's just this extraordinary concepts that when you get that working well in the workplace, you've got people who are honest. You don't have to police and hold people accountable all the time because they'll come forward in the first place. They're doing things properly in the first place anyway, so issues don't arise very often. And you just get this really, really positive workplace that people want to be a part of. And they're selling that brand to their friends, they're selling that brand to the community, they're selling that brand on social media saying, this guy is awesome to work for, this woman is awesome to work for, what a place to be. I'm privileged to be here. If you get a chance, take up an offer in this place because it's absolutely fantastic. And that's down to this concept of respect. So that's my talk for today. I'm sure there'll be a question or two, or Bernie will get us going, but thank you very much. And my apologies for the technical issues during that.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Nollaig. There's a lot of super glue in all of that. And I really appreciate you sharing the concepts with us, and very practical. Your experience across multiple industries, not just agriculture, and overseas through the UK and here in the Middle East. It's great grabbing all of that information and sharing that with us, because it's it's not just unique to dairy, it is across any business. So I appreciate that. We have got some questions. How do you show respect for current staff if you're bringing in a manager above them to essentially replace you in the farm, especially if you think one of the current staff will want to be the manager but is not necessarily capable of the next step?
Great question. And actually, you know, firstly, always look internally. It's the cheapest and best option. So we know from a leadership point of view that the leader grown within the business is nearly always the best option. It's very rarely happened that an outsider is as effective. So, and there's huge studies done on that. You can imagine in the US at the moment, they're fascinated about Trump's regime, and he's an outsider to politics, and you know, so there's a lot of research going on and interest in that idea. So certainly always look internally first. If you have a member of staff who believes they're good enough, look, this model is ideal. The situational leadership model is excellent. Clearly have your roles outlined and say to somebody, you know, explain the difference between where they are and where they need to be, and the hoops they would have to jump through to get that position of unit manager. So we often get a lot of internal sabotage. So a new employee doesn't fit because they're sabotaged by the incumbent employees, but that's actually the staff, that's actually the management's fault for not expressing why this person is coming in, you know, what is their attribute, why are they getting the job over anybody else, and really engaging with the staff before they come in. So if I was bringing a new unit manager in, I would go to each member of staff and say, this is what I'm proposing to do. Get information from your staff. It could be that every one of your staff says, why are you doing that? Bernie is a perfect candidate. Why don't you have him? And you completely overlooked Bernie, for example. So you would go to you should go to your staff individually and say what you're thinking. Manage that carefully so you don't cause a rumor mill. You would speak to them all individually, and you manage it carefully so you don't cause a rumor mill by then speaking to them as a group, speaking to them all as a group so they can hold each other accountable. So if Bernie is the person that you're thinking of who wants to be a manager but isn't good enough, and he starts kicking off, other people can regulate him by saying, well, hold on a minute, we are at the same meeting and this is what was expressed and you don't have that skill set. You should certainly give anybody in your business the opportunity to, so this is about, look, this is really about being timely in your selection. And to do this properly, you need time in the system. So if you're very quickly looking to hire a unit manager, you're going to miss out on all of this really valuable groundwork. So this will be about thinking long-term, having that vision to think we need to bring in a unit manager. How are we going to manage that? Who do we currently have in the system? What's the gap between where they are and where they need to be? Have we discussed that with them? Because it can often be that somebody thinks they're good enough, but when you put it on paper, they realize they're not. And they say, actually, I don't want that responsibility. And I'm not willing to put myself out in that way, even if I get an increase, even if I get a change in pay. So the critical thing is to take your time over doing this, to think about it long before you meet the person, to engage with your staff, to analyze if there's somebody in your staff who's capable of doing it, to show the gaps between your current staff members, where they are and where they would need to be if they wanted that position, and to genuinely give them the opportunity to push for that. So that would be the absolute ideal, where you say, this is where you are, this is where you need to be. I need a unit manager in place on the 1st of June, 2021. You have the opportunity to jump through these hoops by then, but I need to have somebody in place and I will be looking at the same time. And that person may well say, actually, it looks lovely on paper, but I'm not really up for that. So the critical thing, I suppose one of the best examples I have of doing it incorrectly was a really high performing business I work with in construction in the UK. And another company had gone under. And if you're a robust business, this is good times because you can mop up talent. And another well-known construction company in the area, and they knew a particular guy who had an amazing sales skill and also a very good book of the clients. And they were really, these brothers working together, and they really wanted this guy. And when they got him, they were absolutely delighted. And they went and basically said to everybody in the business, we've got this guy, he's fantastic, he's amazing, we're so excited, this is a real jump shift for us, this is really, you know, setting us on a new direction. Now that's what they firmly believed, because they were objective about him, they understood his skill set. But every other employee in the business heard was, we're not good enough. And so when this guy, who had been promised everything because the managing director and financial controller were so impressed by this guy and said, we can't wait to have you, we're so excited. He hit a brick wall when he came into the business. Nobody supported him. Everybody undermined him. They did everything they could. They didn't speak to him when he came into different sites. I mean, they made his life really difficult. And it wasn't his fault, but it wasn't the staff's fault. It was management's fault for selling this guy to them in the wrong way. So they went in all gung-ho, this is our savior, this is the new game changer, this guy is awesome. It's true, he was, by the way, and thankfully he's still there, but that's not what the staff wanted to hear. The staff wanted to know, what's in it for me? If we bring this guy in, what does that mean for me? And there was all these talks, we're going to have so many more sales, it's going to be brilliant. So busy people were saying, great, I'm going to be busier. That's not what I want to hear. So you've got to be mindful of how you interpret. You've got to be mindful of how what you say is perceived by your employees, because they may say, while you think somebody is brilliant to bring in, they may take it as an insult. So sit down, draw it out. Where's the gap between your current staff are? Where's the gap? Where do they need to be to the unit manager? Offer to them, give it to them a certain amount of time and say, come to me by X amount of time if you want this role, but understand that these are the hoops you have to jump through. And if they rise to that challenge, you know what? They're worthy of being a unit manager. Take that person. And if they can't make it, then you have given them you've been strict but fair. You've given them the fair opportunity to do it. Now you're going to be strict and say, you didn't meet where I needed you to meet. I'm now going to look elsewhere. That was a long answer, but hopefully it gave you an idea of where to go.